does it mean to really feel like somebody gets you, like somebody can relate to your feelings and emotions that we spoke about in the last chapter? Shraga, what is containment, emotional containment?
Containment is like a cup that contains the water inside. Containment is what enables us to be ourselves. And we find that in different aspects of our life. In father with children, in marriage. The ability of us to contain other people starts and ends with the ability of us to contain ourselves.
So all relationships are based on containment?
For sure. As parents, we contain our children. As married people, we contain our spouse. As friends, we contain our friends. It's all about containment. We feel secure when we have a feeling and someone else contains our feeling rather than gives us advice. Gives us advice is not containment. It's basically reflecting what we feel on the other person. Containment is listening to the other person's feelings and being there for them.
So what's the relationship between containing someone else and containing oneself?
It's a direct connection. We're only able to contain someone else till where we contain ourselves. Why? Because when someone else has a problem or when someone else shares with us a difficulty, it will feel sometimes threatened from that and will try to defend ourselves by giving advice, by trying to tell him what to do. The more we contain ourselves, the more we contain our feelings in general and regarding to what our friend told us, the more we're able to keep neutral, not being involved emotionally, and we're able to contain and hold him without being there as someone that reflects our life on him.
So that's what happens when someone doesn't feel contained.
When someone doesn't feel contained, he feels fear, he's scared. And to deal with that fear, he increases his defense mechanism, that is control. So when someone doesn't feel contained, he needs to feel secure, and to feel secure, he needs to increase control. So what happens is that the control mechanism works over hours.
And how does containment between any relationship really work?
Containment in relationship means that even though my partner or my friend rocked my boat, I'm able to see his emotional world in the side of my emotional world and contain his feelings that doesn't clash and contradict with my feelings. And even though usually if I don't contain my friend's feelings, so I have to defend myself, so we reach an argument. But if one is able to listen to his friends or to his wife's feelings and to really understand and reflect back to her what she feels and hug her for what she feels, even though it affects him in his own feelings, and to understand that he has a right for his feelings, she has a right for her feelings, and together they contain each other.
Does containment come into the therapy room at all?
Does it come in? Well, where it's not. Therapy is about containment. When someone comes to therapy, he comes because he has fears. No one comes to therapy without fears. Meaning, remember we spoke about in the previous questions about conflict. And a conflict is when someone has two fears and they choose to defend themselves with a bigger fear. But what happens when the fears are equal? They feel helpless. How do they defend themselves from that helplessness? They come to therapy. They tell the therapist, I don't know what to do. I'm devastated. I'm helpless. I don't know how to solve this specific issue. Then we have a window of chance. Now we have a window of opportunity. Now there's the helplessness. But what we need to create that inner trust. Remember what we said? That this helplessness plus containment equals trust. So what the therapist does in the clinic is about to contain the fear of the patient, to be able to talk about the fear, and the patient not needing to defend himself, because the patient can defend himself, because there's another fear that contradicts the other fear that he has. And through that containment, a person grows, growing meaning a person builds the inner security and his quality of life increases.
As far as I understood, sometimes parents are unable to contain their children, and that's essentially what brings them into the therapy room.
Lots of time.
Is there ever a situation where the therapist is unable to contain his clients? And if so, what prevents that from happening?
For sure, there's places like that. Remember, we spoke about before about the relationship between a mother and her son. And what builds the inner security of her son is the mother containing his helplessness. The thing is, when he does something that rocks his mother's security, how many times I told you not to do this? How many times I told you not to do that? Because what he does...
Like we all do.
Yes, like what he does creates fear in his mother. And his mother defends herself on his behalf. Instead of being there for him and saying to him, oh, that must have hurt you, that you fell. Let me be here, mommy's here, everything is okay. And that will build his inner security, his inner feeling of security, and he doesn't have to defend himself. When she defends herself on his behalf, she basically blocks that opportunity for happening. A lot of time, unfortunately, we find that in therapy also, that a therapist, instead of being there for his patient, instead of really containing his patient's need, his patient's feelings, his patient's conflict with what brought his patient to his office, he tries to give advice. And that advice basically has nothing to do with his patient. It has to do with himself, the feelings that he feels regarding what the patient brings up. I'll give you an example. Let's say a patient comes to the office and to the clinic, and he wants to talk to the therapist about the fact that the therapy is expensive for him. So the therapist could solve the patient's problem by saying, you know what, I'll give you a discount, because the therapist felt threatened from what the patient said and he wanted to solve that, or the therapist could contain the patient's feelings. The therapist could talk with the patient and ask him, what does it feel for you to come and pay so much money? And basically touch issues that he won't be able to touch if he's busy defending himself. So the same way parents defend themselves with children, the same way therapists. And regarding the last part of your question, what he has to do, he has to learn to contain himself. The more he works and on these issues with his supervisor, the more he'll be able to, in the clinic, contain his patient.
Is there an opposite of containment?
Opposite of containment is to be judgmental. That means if I feel a feeling regarding what you're doing or what you're saying, and then I want to defend myself, that's opposite of containment. I would say judging is the opposite of containing someone.
There are some really intense people out there. Murderers, rapists, anything, bank robbers. Is it possible to contain even them?
For sure. You're not containing the action. You're containing the person. That means by containing a murderer, you're basically trying to understand what did he feel when he killed someone. He felt fear. And he felt extreme fear. Because if he wasn't scared, he wouldn't do that extreme action. So we want to help him. We want to understand, what did he feel? Why was it so difficult for him that brought him to do what he did? So definitely we could. Because by us containing him as a person, by containing his feelings, we'll be able to build inside of him the inner feeling of trust. And eventually, other times, when he'll reach that place, he won't need to kill somebody to be able to deal with the fears that he feels. So yes, it's for sure, because we have to differentiate between justifying an action and containing the person. And the difference is night and day.
So can you elaborate a little bit on that difference? Because it sounds like if I contain someone, I basically give them a free pass to do whatever they want.
Yeah, that's because you're not differentiating between justification and containment. And it's two different things. By you containing someone, you're basically walking the walk with him. You're basically going into his shoes with him, what he feels, why he feels, and what made him do what he's doing. Justification is basically saying is what he did was good. It's not our job to justify people. We're not here to judge people. See, this is why you asked me what's the difference between what's the opposite of containment. And that's basically judging. Because if we're judging somebody, then we can't contain them. But if we're separating and we're saying there's a person here, there's emotions, we have to understand, we have to be with the person, understand why he did what he did. It's nothing to do about us justifying the actions that he did. And we all know to kill and murder and all these things you said, that the actions are bad actions.
Thank you, Shraga, for that amazing conversation about containment. And now that we've explored this world of justification versus containment, please join us for our next topic about sexuality.